I'm injured right now, so I can't rock climb, but it does mean I've had a lot of time to reflect on my climbing journey. I asked Instagram what you wanted me to talk about for this video, and I got an overwhelming response that people were curious as to how I became a professional rock climber. So in order to do that, we first have to answer this question. What does it mean to be a professional rock climber? At this moment, I would like to bring your attention to the semantic distinction between climbing at a professional level and being a professional rock climber. I'm very good at diagrams, as you can see. There's definitely a lot of overlap here, but do you have to be strong to be a professional rock climber? Not necessarily, but it does feel intuitively part of the definition we keep in our heads, which is why I think the term gets a ton of controversy when people like me, who made their name through social media, call themselves pro climbers. And it's why I wanted to start the presentation with defining what we're actually talking about. For a more official definition, this is what the internet says. Being a professional rock climber means making climbing a primary occupation or significant income source. It involves achieving a high skill level, often participating in competitions, securing sponsorships, and maintaining a strong media presence. Professionals may also engage in first ascents, expeditions, teaching, coaching, and public speaking, dedicating themselves to advancing the sport and inspiring others. In reality, there is a very, very small number of people who are professional climbers who solely rock climb. To support their lives, most pros have some sort of income that comes from outside of their raw climbing. So now that we've gone over that, I thought it would be really fun to format this video as both an exploration of the choices I personally made to become a professional rock climber, as well as examine other avenues one can take to go pro. A sort of how-to video, if you will. So it all begins with becoming a sponsored athlete, but this is not where the journey ends. This pursuit must lead to a sustainable career where you can support yourself and build a real adult life through your climbing. So I made very rudimentary tree diagrams with some major paths that people have historically followed in order to become a professional climber. So let's get into it. Are you the best in the world? Yes. That is awesome. You should reach out to sponsors with your climbing resume and current projects, and they will very likely support you in some way. Congrats, you're a sponsored climber. That was easy. Are you not the best in the world? Okay, no. Are you close to the best? Yes, you can probably, still reach out to sponsors, but not always. And we'll get into that. So no, let's say you're like me. You're not close to the best. Okay, no. Are you willing to put yourself on social media? Yes. Okay, great. If you are, do you have the ability, financial, mental, physical, etc., to put in the work to build up platforms to the point where companies might be interested? If the answer is no, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's going to be hard, and it's unlikely to go pro this way. So if you're not willing to put yourself on social media, do you have the ability, financial, mental, physical, to train hard without being sponsored for years until you potentially reach said top? If not, it's not impossible, but I don't think it's very likely. Huge thank you to PRUNGO, the sponsor for today's video, and it's really good timing because I'm in my injury era with high anticipation of leaving said era very soon. PRUNGO is a red light therapy module designed to relieve pain and help users carry out daily activities more easily, including getting back to climbing faster. I've been putting the red light on my poor little finger at its highest setting for 20 minutes daily. While I'm doing this, I'll also put a module on my wrist because, as you may know, that was a really long injury I just recovered from, and bringing blood flow to the area is never a bad thing. I usually just leave the modules on while watching a show or even just holding one for my finger. It's pretty low effort and non-invasive. Afterwards, my finger feels noticeably less irritated. Using this type of red light therapy long-term accelerates recovery time and improves various types of chronic pain. PRUNGO uses an 850 nanometer deep infrared laser directly reaching bone and has a modular design which is portable and easy to use. If you're dealing with finger or wrist issues from climbing or trying to stay consistent through recovery, I definitely recommend checking out PRUNGO. You can use my discount code and check the link in my description if you want to give it a try. I started climbing when I was 16 years old, almost immediately falling in love with climbing outside, specifically in Joshua Tree, about a 2-hour drive from my home. It became my obsession, and right away I felt I couldn't live without it. I didn't consider climbing a real career possibility until after I graduated college because I just wasn't raised to think that way. Yet throughout these years in school, I couldn't imagine a life without climbing as my priority and started romanticizing about van life. At this time, I actually got my first sponsorship with Evolve because I had climbed all of the hardest slabs in the gym one day with totally busted shoes, and my friend who was also the head setter at the time was playfully mad I did his climbs without any rubber. Since the gym got rentals from Evolve, they had a good relationship, and he asked if they could send this struggling college student a fresh pair of shoes. I walked into the warehouse excited for my free pair of climbing shoes, and they told me they wanted to sponsor me. It was one of the best days of my life. Eventually, I could not ignore my heart tugging at me to go outside, to stay outside. I decided not to continue my education in neuroscience because I strongly felt that doing so, while simultaneously pursuing an outdoor climbing career, would be conflicting and all-encompassing. I knew my mental health would suffer greatly, and I likely wouldn't be successful in either path. I instead opted for the dirtbagging and taking odd jobs route to support myself financially during this time. I got accepted into a TEFL, teaching English as a foreign language, program in Catalonia, where I had heard there was good climbing and a more affordable lifestyle. I put in my 2 weeks' notice and I bought a one-way ticket. Everyone thought I had lost my mind. I literally showed up to Oleana with quick draws racked upside down on a harness I may or may not have stolen from a climbing gym back home, and I still had all my belay tags on. My teaching job fell through upon my arrival, so I had to think fast. I packed my bag and went to the mountains without a plan or money. I was 22 and I found myself halfway around the world making the worst vlogs you've ever seen. I ended up living out of someone else's car and during this time was constantly trying to figure out my next source of income. I taught myself video editing, picked up a regular remote editing job, and started chugging away at my own videos. Of the career paths that have to do with climbing specifically, having a social media presence appealed the most to me. I liked the idea of brands sponsoring me holistically. As a creator, comedian, model, voice, climber, filmmaker, and whatever else I chose to bring to the table, not solely relying on my pure climbing achievements. Because, well, I had no significant climbing achievements. I've also never minded being in front of a camera. I feel like I thrive under this kind of pressure and can stay genuine to myself. I've been told I have a good screen presence, but feel free to disagree. I often think I'm quite awkward. For nearly 2 years, I was living on the road out of a single suitcase, in vans, couches, cars, and whatever free or cheap accommodation I could find. I was uploading 2 to 3 long-form videos a week on YouTube while balancing my other jobs and, well, climbing outside as much as possible. In this time, I managed to make a whopping $1,203.47 from YouTube. This comes out to about $55 a month. I would wear bright clothes to the crag in hopes a photographer might take my picture so I could send that to potential sponsors, which worked, by the way. I slowly accumulated my own free climbing kit. During this time, I was terrified that I would have to give up because it was far from sustainable. I also felt judged for trying to be an influencer, which got a really bad rap at this point in time, especially when you're both not very strong and don't have a following yet. I finally came home after the pandemic, after my hair started falling out in alopecia stress clumps, and I was totally depressed because who was I kidding? I was nobody and I wasn't becoming anybody. I was now 24. I wasn't getting stronger fast enough. My YouTube wasn't gaining enough traction. The audacity I had to believe that somehow I was special and worth anyone's time. What's worse, I'd lost my most regular freelance editing job and felt like this was my breaking point. I wasn't gonna make it after all, was I? Here's a video I made from that moment in time. Hi everyone! I get a lot of questions like, Anna, what do you do when you're not climbing? You always seem to be climbing. And I just wanted to give you a little glimpse into what I do on the days I don't climb. I am a freelance video editor, which is tough in its own ways because jobs are not secure. It definitely leads to a lot of existential crises about, okay, is this sustainable? Is this gonna work? And then my future career, like how can I keep doing what I wanna do without, you know, freaking out? So anyways, I like to use Adobe Premiere Pro, and this is kind of what that looks like. I live with my family. Here's my mom, my brother, he works here in his room, my little sister, and then my dad, of course. And sometimes I'll go downstairs and eat food. I just made a smoothie. That's pretty standard. I'll do that a lot. Oh shoot. then I'll just eat a lot of food throughout the day, starting with coffee in the morning and just, you know, copious amounts of food. And then I'll come back upstairs and probably do some more editing on some of my passion projects or my own YouTube or something, you know, try to have fun with it because I actually really do love editing. It's so cool. And then I'll go to bed, and that's kind of what a day looks like for me. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. And this is a pretty, and yet somehow every day I just did it anyways. Because I fucking love climbing and video creation and all the wacky adventures and people that climbing brings. And I love all the challenges I overcome and the life lessons it offers. And I didn't care if that meant I would be penny pinching for my entire adult life. If there was a 0.0000001% chance that I was going to make it as a professional rock climber, I was gonna buy that lottery ticket. Once travel was reopened again, I bought another one-way ticket, this time to the UK. My friend Ezra had his van there, and I could stay with him for some UK climbing adventures. Here's where my luck changed. I reached out to the Wide Boys to see if they wanted to collaborate with me for a YouTube video, and Mr. Tom Randall said absolutely, let's do it. I mentioned maybe I needed a place to stay while we did the video because, you know, I was living out of a backpack again. He offered their spare room, and a few days turned into over a month because we both got psyched on this famous slab trad climb called Once Upon a Time in the Southwest. Sending once was a turning point. People started considering me seriously in the world of climbing. I gained 40,000 followers practically overnight. But here's the thing, I've always loved the very niche style of slab climbing. It's how I got my first sponsorship. It's how I ended up making a name for myself. I had already even created the mantra, slab is sexy, and put it in my bio well before this climb. I made a short film about the ascent because I'm a storyteller at heart, and that's when my YouTube also jumped up in subscribers. This is when Rab scouted me, my second main sponsor, and I have been with them ever since. Here's where I began realizing I didn't have to be the best to inspire people, secure sponsorships, advance the sport, and maintain a strong social media presence, all things that definitionally have a lot to do with being a professional rock climber. There was still a large problem, however, and it was that I wasn't making nearly enough money to sustain a normal life, you know, with an apartment, with a bed and running water. I remember many conversations with Tom where I was crying, explaining how I would have to find another career because it still wasn't working. To be totally honest with y'all, I only started making a livable salary around 3 years ago, or 4 years into my YouTube journey. That's when my athlete contracts started getting significantly better. I started accumulating a resume of proud accomplishments and even establishing my own routes. I began landing regular YouTube sponsors for my videos, and I was being requested for more paid events. Now, alongside being on paid global athlete teams, I also work with brands on content-specific sponsorships for my social media, which feels distinctly separate, more like a job. Sometimes companies reach out directly to sponsor a YouTube video or an Instagram reel, or they'll go through my content manager and we'll negotiate from there if it's a good fit. For larger film projects and sponsored climbing trips, I will create a project pitch with my goals, media deliverables, a budget, etc. to send to sponsors for support. These days, well, when I'm not injured, companies mostly say yes. Here's where I think it's important to acknowledge a few incontrovertible facts. I may not have started as a wee child with climbing parents, but I've got a whole lot of luck and privilege to thank for my career, beginning with just being born in an affluent country with a good visa and a happy family. It's not lost on me that I'm able to live in California, of all places, for months on end if something goes wrong, say, like being injured, because I have the privilege to stay at my parents' house and I don't have to pay rent here. It sure as hell made my life easier knowing that if everything went totally wrong, I could just come back home and restart. Even if restarting for me meant, you know, going to med school or doing a career path I didn't want to do, I still had this safety net. It would be blatantly ignorant not to mention this massive head start I, alongside many professional climbers, and more than that, many professional athletes have had. Another privilege point is a bit of an awkward topic, but it's my looks. And if we're gonna have an honest conversation about how social media propelled me into my current career, it would feel incomplete not to mention it. Sure, I'm not exactly Barbie, but I'm thin and conventionally feminine, especially lately as I've grown my hair out and opted for a more traditional appearance. What if you don't have those privileges? Starting with the look side of things, being memorable matters far more than fitting some narrow idea of what a climber is supposed to look like. I never really saw myself as traditionally attractive, but the wild hair colors ended up being the thing people remembered. Climbing is still pretty starved of diversity in bodies and backgrounds, and every person who shows up as themselves helps shift that. The more stories we see, the more inclusive the sport becomes. And maybe your situation is different. Maybe you're supporting kids or aging parents, or just don't have the financial cushion to take big risks. That doesn't mean this path is closed off, it just means your approach has to be more intentional. Treating social media as a side hustle is a solid place to start, and small choices, like finding remote work or flexible income, can make a huge difference in how much time and energy you can put towards climbing. There isn't one clean, glamorous route into this, but there are realistic ones. So let's get into a few ways you can build a career in climbing that could eventually open the door to sponsorship. Two things need to happen here. You probably need to gain a following of some sort, and you probably need to figure out how to make enough money to keep living as a human. These can and do lead into each other, but generating an income through climbing is far from instant. So maybe you're sponsored, maybe you're not, but this tree diagram is going to go over the question, can you make a living from climbing alone? If the answer is yes, hello, Alex, Adam, Yanya, and friends, congratulations. This goes back to, are you the best in the world? Although I don't know their lives and I don't know what contractual obligations they have to do certain events, but for the most part, I would imagine they get to focus in on their climbing career a lot and they don't have to take up another job. But for us plebeians, and the normal path forward, I would say, especially if you want things like a family or a house or any kind of, stability in life, you probably would want to branch out and have another source of income that isn't solely reliant on your physical ability. That gets into, are you going to have this social media presence, or what are you going to do to fund your life outside of rock climbing? Or, do you have a financial situation where money's not a problem, so you don't actually need to worry about that, right? And so the sponsorship funding is actually enough because maybe you're not paying rent, choosing to be a dirtbag or something like this, where you'd actually, you don't need a lot of income and you're happy that way. A lot of these different paths include podcasting, coaching, YouTube, writing articles, selling climbing tools and products, gym ownership, production companies, and so on. In theory, this approach eventually leads to sponsorships from companies that align with you and your goals. While you're asking yourself what your thing is, you may also consider why you want to share that thing. What impact do you plan to have when you offer your climbing to the community? Is it just that you're psyched and strong and want to share that journey, or do you have a greater mission or ambition? Are you representing someone you don't often see in climbing? Why does it matter? Does it have to matter? So great. Now you've decided, this is for me. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try to go pro. Now what? I'm glad you asked. Here's my prediction. You will make mistakes. You will date all the wrong people until maybe you find the right one. You will say the wrong things. You will hurt someone you love and simultaneously someone you've never met without a chance to ever apologize. I'm sorry. You will learn how to be a better version of yourself step by step, and you will continue to be so painfully human every day. The only difference being that a lot of your growing pains may be eternalized and picked apart online. You might have a bad day at the gym and think about it for hours, wondering if someone thinks you're a total narcissistic jerk. And then that same day, you'll see a public discussion about how pathetic it is that someone like you is considered a professional climber, taking a precious spot away from someone who actually deserves it. And if you're a woman, congratulations. You most certainly will have to work through body image issues as your strength develops. As you process these changes, you will likely see atrocious comments about the very physical attributes you're most insecure about. But goddamn, is it worth it? Because through everything, you will also be given the opportunity to advocate and inspire. You will receive multiple messages saying that you are the reason someone got into climbing. Your video was the first video they ever saw about climbing. You'll get more messages still, explaining how your presence in the climbing community makes someone feel welcomed, happy, joyful, empowered, not alone. People will say hi at the crag and thank you. You will be surrounded by so much love, it sometimes feels impossible to believe anyone could do anything to deserve so much. And although, just like any career, there will be struggles, you get to wake up every day and live the life you almost didn't dare to start.